And ready to go, Joelle?
Yes, we are live and ready to go.
All right, then we'll call our meeting to order with a welcome and hello, everybody. Good morning. So let's see, there you are. And Joelle, would you introduce the caring directors on this committee, please? For roll call.
Committee member Anderson.
I'm here.
Committee member Paul. Chair Roberson.
And I'm here as well.
We have a quorum of the committee.
All right. And since
Karen should join us because, she sent that note saying she had a hard stop at 11. So.
Yes, and pretty packed agenda, but we'll whip through it, I hope.
We're going to go very quickly.
I like that. So first thing is comment. This is a Brown Act committee. So with that, we have comments from the public on, and these would be comments not on the agenda, correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
That's correct.
All right, so this is the open mic time for people to share any thoughts that they may have that was in the within the district's jurisdiction and probably within the water demands jurisdiction as well, but we won't worry about that gray line, will we? So, Joelle, since this is a virtual meeting, you probably want to take a moment to explain how people can join us, and let's see if anyone wants to say anything.
Yes, so if you would like to provide public comment on items not listed on today's agenda, please do so by using the raise hand feature on your Zoom application. Chair Roberson, I see no raised hands.
All right, we'll close that public comment section then and go right ahead into the agenda. So we have several action items and all right. Are we going to do the minutes
item one? Yeah.
Item one is the minutes. And so we'll see if there are any additions, deletions, corrections to the minutes from our directors or any public comment.
I have no changes to suggest.
All right. But I'm good. And so any public comment, Joelle?
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 1, please raise your hand. Chair Roberson, I see no raised hands.
All right, then I will close the public comment section of this and make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, with no more discussion, and there are just 2 directors here right now, is my understanding, correct?
That is correct.
Amy, you know what we can get away with just the 2
Actually,
of us?
we have a committee member Paul just joined us.
Oh, committee Paul, that's fine. Welcome.
I'm sorry.
You can't get away with it now, Clyde.
Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, we were just about to make a motion to give Karen a gigantic raise, right? So we were just now voting on the minutes. There were no comments from the public or any of the directors. Do you have any comments on the minutes?
I do not. I read them. I have none.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Committee member Paul.
Yes.
Committee member Anderson.
Yes.
Chair Roberson.
Yes.
The motion is adopted.
All right, thank you. We're going to consider grant funding for recirculating fire suppression training device. Well, that sounds interesting. I'll turn it over to our wonderful general manager, Dave.
Yeah, I'm going to let Stephanie Locke introduce this. I do note that as participants, we've got Chief Panholzer on, as well as Greg Greenlee, the gentleman who's mentioned in the staff note as the coordinator for MPC on this. So they may want to speak. Steph, go ahead.
Yeah, now I'll just briefly introduce this item. The district has a local water project grant that we have funded for this year at $50,000. And we were contacted by Greg Greenlee from the Fire Protection Technology Coordinator, who is the Fire Protection Technology Coordinator for MPC, and is also the president of the County Fire Training Officers Association
Hmm.
about whether the district would be interested in providing a grant so that they could purchase a training equipment that recirculates water used for firefighter training rather than having it run to waste. And I think this is a very wise use of funding for the project, since the district obviously supports not wasting water. Firefighting is a public benefit, and I think that also puts it into an area that we would want to consider this. I've proposed that the Water Demand Committee consider recommending a commitment, and this would be a recommendation to the board, a commitment of up to $25,000 toward the purchase of this device, conditioned on other funding sources being secured, and that the purchase occur within this current district fiscal year. And again, like I said, this will go to the board, but I'm looking for a recommendation from the Water Demand Committee. And as Dave said, we do have at least 2 people in our audience that may want to say something further about it, but staff recommends approval on it.
And I just want to make sure you're all aware that MPC is within the jurisdiction of the district, but some of the training takes place outside the jurisdiction of the district. So it's not 100%, CalAm or district jurisdictional water savings, but philosophically, it's still water savings. So that's kind of where we're at.
Good. We have a question from Director Amy.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just curiosity. Have these tools been available widely for a long time? Is this kind of a new thing since the water problem started in the West?
Well, we might want to bring Greg on.
I'm curious about.
Yeah, I also had similar question, like how much are these in use already? What's the experience with them, and what's the useful life of these devices?
Yeah, Joelle, do you want to try to bring either Greg or Chief Panholzer has his hand up?
There we go.
Not hand, but just microphone's now available. So Greg or Chief, is there anything you can shed on the director's questions?
Yeah, sure. This is Chief Panholzer, and good morning to all the committee members. And first of all, I want to encourage you to support this proposition. And to answer the question, these devices are somewhat newer devices. In the past, we just never really cared about water usage, but probably over the last 10 years or so, there is a device that's available locally in the county to do pump testing that's been in use for quite a while. And this is just a larger iteration of that also has some features that makes it more suitable to do firefighter training. We've kind of restricted our firefighter training in the past years because of the water issue, and are very careful about minimizing our water use. And so this device would allow us to ramp up our training again and meet the needs of our firefighting force, and also for aspiring firefighters, because MPC also runs a firefighter academy, and that's also a valuable resource to local agencies because it creates a hiring pool. There's another side benefit to all of this, because normally this water would be allowed to run off, but we are using treated water, which contains chlorine and things like that, and that really shouldn't be discharged into the environment. So this recirculates the water, and so there's an environmental benefit as well. So there's really an all-around great benefit out of this device. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
I have another question. What are the prospects for getting more funding so you can actually do this?
Yeah,
I'll have to let Greg Greenlee answer that one.
Hi, thank you for the consideration of this. And, again, I have some dual positions, the coordinator for the MPC fire program, but also division chief, City of Monterey, and the current president of the County Fire Training Officer Association. These are, like the chief said, these are relatively new. I believe there's a lot of more of them in Southern California than Northern California, but several of the community colleges in Southern California were able to partner with the various water boards to put these in place, and they've been very successful. Answering the earlier question about life expectancy, they have an unlimited 1-year warranty, a 4-year warranty against catastrophic failure, and then other warranties depend on the actual materials. There's no electronics or real moving parts other than flowing water through plumbing. So the items that could be damaged, repaired, or fixed are not proprietary or standalone, something specific to this product. As to the question about the rest of the funding, we are in conversation with Marina Coast Water. I have reached out to the Monterey One Water to see, like the chief just said, about if we're reducing water flow into that system, if that could be an area where they may have some funding available. And then between the community college district, some grants available there, and also working with the county training officers and potentially the local fire agencies to see if we can bridge the gap between the rest of the purchase, because we do understand that this is an expensive prop or an expensive tool for us, but the potential savings of hundreds of thousands, if not more water per year in the various water districts is definitely something that we wanted to look into and pursue. So again, we appreciate the consideration for this.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no other questions, let's go out to the public.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 2, please raise your hand. Committee members, are you able to see my timer here?
Yes.
And at this time, I would like to invite Carlos Vega. Carlos, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we could hear you.
Hi, my name is Carlos Vega. I'm a division Marina Fire Department, and I'm here in support of getting this piece of equipment, which is actually very important. It's something we can relate to out of Marina, where we monitor our water use, even for training or even fire suppression. Is something the Marina Coastal Water keeps track of. This is an important tool that not only for the academy, but also we use the Marina Fire Department. We go out to the academy to train, and it's something that we go out there and get invited to do certain training that's vital to our firefighters that we're not able to provide in-house. So something like this would not only be beneficial for our department, but other departments in the county that also go out to MPC and take advantage of either ongoing training, specialized training classes. This is just something that benefits firefighters all throughout the county while saving water, which that's kind of one of the big things that we're all concerned about, especially the community. So I'm just here to show support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carlos. Joelle, do we have any other speakers?
Chair Roberson, I see no raised hands.
All right, we'll bring it back to the committee then for action.
I recommend that we move this forward, recommend it to the board.
I second that, and I want to thank the chief, the fire district, for bringing this proposal, which sounds really helpful for many reasons, good reasons. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Yeah, it's a good point. Looks like a win-win on many areas. And it's always nice to hear from our Monterey chief, who actually is the chief for many of our cities and our whole region. So Gaudens, glad to hear from you, and Greg, you as well, and Carlos, thanks for sharing with us. Roll call, please.
Committee member Paul?
Yes.
Committee member Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Roberson?
Yes.
Motion is adopted.
All right, thanks so much. Let's move on to consider a rebate for smart toilet leak detectors. So once again, to our general manager, are you going to punt that again to your very capable staff? That's
Yes.
the way we do it.
Absolutely.
Punt. Yeah, This item is looking for a recommendation for what we're calling smart toilet leak detectors. And this came as an original request from the Portola Plaza Hotel. Prior to the pandemic, the district had been approached about participating in a project. They were going to do a trial project of installing these leak detectors in the hotel rooms, and had looked for support from the district at that time, but then everything shut down, and so we didn't do anything with it. However, the Pebble Beach company did move forward with installing, I think, 350 of these devices in rooms around the resort. And what they found was that particularly when the occupancy was lower, it triggered a lot of notifications of leaking toilets, and they were able to save a lot of water. So, when people are in the rooms, they often report leaking toilets, however, they're not going to catch everything. So these devices actually trigger a web-based notification system where the engineers that work in the hotels or whatever get information on their smartphones and are able to respond to a situation fairly quickly. So I did discuss this with CalAm, and they are supportive of adding a rebate. The proposal would be to pay 25% of the cost of the individual monitoring devices when someone installs a minimum of 20 of the devices, and that we cap the total rebate at $15,000. So the price of the devices varies. I believe that the proposed system, the Sensor Industries toilet sensor that was in the staff report, costs approximately $200 per device. So that would be a $50 rebate, and the cap of $15,000 would allow up to 300 of those devices to be installed for a rebate. And then the other thing is we would also want to try to target some smaller hotels, because the smaller hotels may tend to have less occupancy, and we want to, they would benefit also from these kinds of devices. And interestingly, the board adopted a rebate for the smart flow meters last spring. We've actually had quite a few people come in to get those devices, or to get the rebate on those devices. So that has been a big win. And this just is another type of device that will provide a way for people to identify and repair their leaks. So this also will go to the board, but yeah, the recommendation is that we consider approving the rebate for 25% of the cost of 20 or more smart toilet leak detectors with a maximum of $15,000.
All right, I have a question, and that is, you said Pebble Beach Corporation did it on their own?
Yeah, they did it on their own at Spanish Bay, and then some of the golf villas along the newer ones along the first hole. I've spoken with their coordinator for energy and conservation, and they found quite a good piece of feedback during the low occupancy times of COVID, because nobody's in there jiggling a handle or noticing anything. But as Stephanie said, when you've got high occupancy, it's more likely to be self-fixing or reported by a room guest. But what we've noticed on the Monterey Peninsula is some of the very high-end hotels have the higher occupancy rates. So we're hopeful that this will also allow some of the smaller, less filled hotels, or the ones that go through, high occupancy at the weekends, but low occupancy Monday through Thursday. Then, they'll get informational feedback during that low occupancy period. So might be of value, but we're just trying to put the incentive out there.
Yeah, and the source of funding?
The source of funding is our rebate program, which is funded by the ratepayers and CalAm, and partially by the district. And we do have a budget of, I believe it's $600,000 per year on it. So there's definitely sufficient funding.
Okay, and do we have any idea how much money this saves a hotel by eliminating their leaks? Because obviously there's a direct benefit to them because they're paying a lower water bill.
Right. We don't have that data, and the anecdotal data that Brent Reeds at Pebble Beach Company provided me seems to indicate that they think it's a net positive. But as you said, the data shows that during high occupancy periods, it's not policing as much as just, you know, the individual in the room.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify
Self-focus.
because it depends obviously on the equipment. And I think that the fact that Portola is actually giving it a consideration at this point, and they're very aware that Pebble Beach did this, then there's been communication between the two. And I think they wouldn't do it if they didn't feel that it was cost effective. So.
Right.
And all the hotels have different ages of equipment. And so, you know, a stuck toilet flap may be more likely in older equipment. I can tell you a slightly funny story, at least funny to us, probably not funny to the Pebble Beach Company. But when they were looking at redoing all of the interior room architecture, the decor, we got to tour the proposed changes for both the lodge at Pebble Beach and the inn at Spanish Bay. And on one of our tours, as she has known to do, Ms. Locke pulled up the lid on the tank of one of the Spanish Bay toilets and discovered it had been modified or hand cut with a knife to kind of change the flow rate and I guess perform a little bit better. And it wasn't just a one-off. It, you know, it had been done in several locations. And so the managing, you know, when you think about it, dripping showers are pretty obvious, but leaking toilets are just kind of something you just don't see. And so this is an attempt to, you know, get real-time information on something that people don't really notice. But when you consider a room, it's either the sink, the toilet, or the shower. And, you know, the toilets are the ones that will run and run and run without people noticing. So I think it's a good investment. I think ultimately the superintendents or the infrastructure people at the hotels are going to have to do their own cost benefit on this.
So
Questions from our directors?
I'm wondering if the Monterey County tourist organization can use smart toilets in our advertising. We've got smart toilets. I love it.
Yeah, I do know they talk about it. You know, Janine Chikarat, who's the general manager at the Portola, has recently been the, you know, I think she's immediate past president of MCHA, and they have these discussions at their meetings. And, you know, when they do a trial run, they kind of, you know, puff their chest out a little bit and tell others what they're up to. So I think that internally among those folks in hospitality, there is an interest, there is discussion. So, you know, hopefully it'll yield some fruit with people coming to take advantage of the rebate.
Do we have a way of getting the word out to the smaller hotels? Have you good?
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I think, well, I think that we can do targets to the hotels. We have their mailing addresses. So we can send them a postcard or email. And yeah, I think that we would definitely want to do that.
Yeah, I think the current MCHA president is with Inns by the Sea, which is, you know, a collection of smaller hotels.
Yeah, I think it would be really important to do that. Do a good job of getting the word out to the smaller ones, so that it's not, you know, it benefits them as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So let's see if there's public comment. Joelle, please.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Chair Roberson, I see no raised hand.
All right, back to our committee then. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve this to be sent to the board.
Second.
All right. And under discussion, I would think, rebate or not, this would be a good program for all of our commercial properties to do. And if the rebate helps that to happen, then of course that's good. And it's interesting too, $200, you can get a, well, not installed unless you do it yourself, but you get a new toilet for that. And it seems like the technology should include that in new toilets, but maybe it does.
Good point.
I have to add an additional piece of equipment to it.
You know, Mayor, I'll bet it becomes an option within the next decade, because oddly, the California Energy Commission sets standards for, you know, water conserving devices. And so, like in California, you can't buy a toilet with a higher flush rate than the 1.28 anymore.
Right.
And so those plumbing standards are always being looked at. And I could see where they might, you know, eventually mandate a model or some sort of connectivity at least, so that it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Hey, we can let's do a startup company.
There you go.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Committee Member Paz,
Yes.
Committee Member Anderson,
Yes.
Committee Member Roberson.
Yes.
The motion is adopted.
All right, thank you. Let's consider a recommendation to the board to adopt the 2022 water supply and demand forecast, which was added via addendum. So
Yes, this
All
was
right.
added on Tuesday. Sorry about the lack of timeliness, but after the packet went out, one of the other directors who's not on this committee said, you know, hey, look, now that we've got a new forecast, we should formalize it, adopt it as a technical memo at the full board, and it should go through Water Demand Committee. And I said, that's a pretty good idea. So we added, what you have in your packet is a brief staff note, some of the direct testimony from the current phase 2 in front of the Public Utilities Commission, the AMBAG 2023 Regional Growth Forecast, and then some backup material. And what the backup material does or purports to explain, at least for the uninitiated, it might be a little complex, but our approach to demand forecasting has kind of evolved into taking it less from the gut of a city manager or a planning director and put it more into the objective outside analysis of the AMBAG growth forecast. Because what we've seen in the past is when we first started developing a look at water demand forecasting, we went and we looked at 20 years worth of data, kind of pre-cease and desist order, post-cease and desist order. And we said, well, before the cease and desist order, the community was only adding about 16 acre feet per year for housing. And the response was visceral and kind of landed on two things. One was, even before the CDO, water was scarce. Some cities ran through their allocations, like Pacific Grove. And second, you know, there was this prevailing feeling like, oh, if we only had water, there's so much pent up demand. We're gonna build 2 hotels. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. We have so many ideas and we have so many plans. And we said, well, tell us what those ideas and those plans are, and we'll modify our forecast based on your input. The individual cities' input never materialized. There was nothing there. But in that process, we started examining what AMBAG does and how they do it and the rigor of their modeling. And their models are very rigorous. You know, they changed their approach in 2014, used it again in 2018, and are using it again here. And they've tested their approach with 4 other kind of modeling efforts. And so the AMBAG growth forecast, in effect, does a forecast of job growth. That job growth translates into population growth. And then we, on the water side, can say, okay, water use is either residential, i.e. population, or commercial or non-residential, i.e. let's use job growth as a proxy for the growth in the commercial sector. So what that attachment C or exhibit C is to show you that what we did is we took 3 years pre-COVID of consumption data by jurisdiction and by type of use, and we segregated that into residential and non-residential and proportioned it to the 7 jurisdictions, the 6 cities and the county. And then we took actual 5-year production data and we said, okay, we'll take that same mapping, those same ratios, but now we're looking at production. What production is the water that is produced and delivered into the system to meet demand. And so now we're just looking at all the water that needs to be delivered to the system, again, allocated to the cities and allocated to residential and non-residential. And then we say, let's look at the objective third-party AMBAG growth forecast, which at this point is not modified for a lack of water. You may recall, for example, the housing numbers, the RHNA numbers in the 5th cycle, and I think also in the 4th cycle, said, well, we've done a little adjustment. We've moved some of the units out of Carmel and Pacific Grove, and we made a decision to move them more towards Marina because the peninsula is water constrained, and it would be more likely that folks could move from or could drive from Marina to the peninsula rather than Salinas to the peninsula. So they made accommodation for the scarcity of water, but they don't do that anymore. The new RHNA cycle does not recognize those constraints, and they basically say, hey, every jurisdiction, you need to come up with your local housing elements to accommodate this housing. And, implied is go solve your problems. So what we do then is we take the AMBAG growth forecast and we determine the growth that, the current one is through 2045. So that's, in effect, a 25-year forecast off a base of 2020. And then we figure out what the growth in residential is for each jurisdiction, because they're not the same growth rate, what the growth in commercial is for each jurisdiction. And then we add them all back up together, and that becomes the growth forecast. Because that's only 25 years, we divide it as if it's steady over each year, but then we carry it out to the 30th year, so we have a full 30-year forecast. So it's a fairly rigorous approach. I think where we are experiencing controversy or pushback is the Cal-Am approach not only double counts, but triple counts certain things. They inadvertently did not recognize that the 6th cycle RHNA numbers were considered and are embedded in the 22 AMBAG regional growth forecast. So they added them on top as if houses use water, but they put it on top of the population forecast. And as we know, people use water. The houses are built to accommodate people. So you can't have people using water in your forecast, and then the house that the people live in separately using water. And then they also added water for legal lots of record, but that's where you build the houses. So you can't ascribe water to a lot. The lot doesn't use the water until people live on that lot and people live in the houses. So
Right.
there's some inadvertent overcounting in the Cal-Am forecast. And so what happens is water demand forecasting is how much do I use today? How much do I need in the future? and how quickly am I going to get there? And the how quickly am I going to get there is really embedded in the growth forecast that AMBAG has done. You know, how much am I going to grow the first 5 years, the second 5 years, and so forth through 2045. So what we see in the two sets of testimony that have been filed is Cal-Am's how much do we use today number is actually lower than the district's. The district is using production from data that we receive from Cal-Am, and then we compile it and accumulate it. But it's it's 300 to 400 acre feet per year higher than Cal-Am's starting point. But the ending point out there in 2045 is wildly significantly higher for Cal-Am's forecast than the district's forecast. And we believe it's due to this, double and triple counting issue, the mistaken assumption that all the RHNA housing has to be built in the 8-year RHNA period. And we had done our research. We knew that's not the case, but we just received validation in yesterday's weekly, where Pam Marino writes, cities and counties do not have to guarantee the units will be built by 2031, but they do have to rezone areas and remove barriers to developers who may take on the actual construction. And that's something we've known throughout this whole process, that it was apparent that Cal-Am didn't know. So Cal-Am jammed all the housing units for the local jurisdictions into actually being built in the next 8 years.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
when you look at the experiences of any other jurisdiction in California, or the protest letter from Sand City or Greenfield, it's virtually impossible. The incentives aren't there for private developers. The money's not there from community foundations and public agency developers. And it just takes longer. But what we see is a renewed commitment by the cities to peel away those barriers, demonstrate in their housing elements that there is zoning or there are specific use areas and so forth that the housing could be built. And that's what the RHNA process is all about. So anyway, we had expected, the district had expected, that the stark differences between our view and Cal-Am's view would already have been publicized, because all of this information was put into the hands of our local press about 3 weeks ago, and nobody's really picked up on it. It's a really obtuse discussion and analysis that has to be done. So the idea now would be to summarize the forecast and then the supply needed to meet that forecast in a single document that would be brought to the board at the meeting on the 19th, the full board meeting on the 19th. And so the recommendation to you is to direct staff to produce a formal report.
May I, through the chair, I'm speaking up now. First of all, I'm gonna have to switch to devices to stay in the meeting in a moment, but I want to say that Dave, I have read all the demand analysis you have submitted, and you have done a really outstanding job of that analysis. It's a tremendous contribution. It's so important. So, I mean, we are really in your debt for having done that analysis. And also, your conclusions are, I mean, other experts have, reached conclusions similar to yours. So it's really vital information. And it's a great idea for the board to adopt it formally so that to give this analysis more prominence. So I just want to thank you. And if I disappear from the meeting momentarily, I will rejoin. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And,
Karen.
Yeah.
and Director Paul did touch on something. We spent quite a bit of our testimony saying, here's how you should forecast demand, but even if you don't believe that that's the way to do it, here's what's wrong with these other assumptions about legal lots of record, Pebble Beach entitlements, and so forth. I think any document that I bring to our board is not going to spend as much time on what's wrong with those assumptions because they're really not part of, or should not be part of, the analysis. Economic growth and population growth in Pebble Beach should be part of the economic growth and population growth in the unincorporated county that's in the AMBAG forecast. You know, AMBAG did dozens of meetings with the local jurisdictions. And so if there's something a jurisdiction, a city or the county in the unincorporated area was planning to build, it's supposed to be in there. And it's also a long-term forecast. So if you're planning to build it, and it may happen in 10 years, it may happen in 15 years, it's kind of out there, but it's still supposed to be in the economic forecast and job creation that AMBAG is forecasting. So it's not like a decision to add hotel rooms at Spanish Bay is unique and separate from economic growth in the unincorporated county on the Monterey Peninsula. It's part of it. So these are some things that I'm just, I'll tell you, people have not spent enough time really thinking about. And once you think about it, there's stuff that's not supposed to be. So there's another area as well. Cal-Am says, well, we only have direct rights to offset Carmel River pumping from the Sand City desal plant of 94 acre feet. But the growth forecast includes all of Sand City's growth. And so whether it's met by Sand City's entitlement or by Cal-Am's water supply, if it's in your demand forecast, then it needs to be in your supply forecast, or you have to take it out of your demand forecast. You can't have it both ways. You can't leave it in the demand and take it out of the supply, which again is what Cal-Am did in its testimony. So we've tried to self-correct, and in some places it's tens of acre feet, and in other cases it's hundreds of acre feet. We had Chief Panholzer on earlier, about a month ago. We did a data request because the fire flow number in California American's Urban Water Management Plan was 400 acre feet per year. And then they embedded that in their demand forecast. The approach they've taken in their testimony was more like our approach, where they said, well, we're going to start with production, and that already includes losses and fire flows. So whether we were correct or incorrect doesn't matter. Well, that's true, but in prior events and venues, they've hung their hat on their urban water management plan. So when we did our data request, I mean, basically what we were seeing is it was almost as if you built Sand City, burned it to the ground, rebuilt it every year. 400 acre feet of water for fire flow made no sense whatsoever. And our data request kind of smoked that out. And they said, oh, we've gone back and we've looked at the data. It's 3 acre feet per year. Yet over in another venue and in their testimony, they said, oh, we're going to run some new numbers, some modeling of the Seaside groundwater basin to look at protective water levels based on our urban water management plan. So even if they've taken out of their process for demand forecasting, which has all of these other problems we talked about, they've left it in for a point they're trying to make on the Seaside groundwater basin, that we need more water for protective water levels. Well, again, if you overstate how much water is needed, you're going to overstate your shortfall. And, that's what we call garbage in, garbage out. So anyway, there are things that are out there that we somehow just ask better questions about.
And any questions at this point, Amy, before we go out to the public?
Well, I mean, it is complicated information. I mean, reading the report, it's complicated information. So I would love to see this kind of a report you're prepared to put out to the public that, you know, it's going to be an accomplishment to get this with enough information in it, but not too much. Of course, we don't want that formula in there, right? Like that was painful. But what you just told us about today, it makes a whole lot of sense. Even just some examples of why things were not correct, what was being done is very helpful, because those examples, people are able to extrapolate those to, you know, other potential problems with the numbers. So those are very, very helpful. Karen was talking about having read, was it the same information that you have in here in the 3.1? See, what is that? That's the exhibit 1B, well, no, it was your testimony. Is there?
Yeah, it was yeah, and there's many other pages that I think she slogged through the whole thing.
So you're not suggesting that we all have that to slog through?
No, but we will be telling the board and the public that all the testimony from this phase, from ourselves, from Monterey One Water, and from CalAm, we're now going to post on our website through a quick link.
Yeah, no, this was a very good summary, extraction, and made a whole lot of sense. So I thank you for doing that. That was very, very helpful. And the AMBAG stuff too, actually, how they're doing their analysis now. And when you started figuring out what a cohort component forecast is, and you saw all that stuff, that, okay, I get it. Well, anyway, thank you for all of that information. It was a big meal, but
Good, thank you, Amy. Let's see if there's public comment, Joelle.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Committee members, are you able to see the timer here?
Yes, we can.
This time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joelle. Thank you, committee members. That was really painful to listen to. It's difficult to watch the district be dismissive of the need for housing. It's dismissive of your responsibility to provide a sustainable, sufficient water supply for this community. For many years now, this community has had artificial restrictions on supply that have, as we all know, eventually ended up with the development community, people that would like to do good work on this peninsula, to maybe build affordable housing even, for instance, to be frustrated, as well as the community should be at large. I feel that the conversation I just heard was a complete abdication of your responsibility as a water district. I think it has more to do with Measure J and trying to really make it seem as if you're doing your job because you're hoping that Pure Water Monterey is going to be sufficient. Prior levels of demand are artificial because supply hasn't been there to truly meet the demand. Job growth is what it is. How about the cars that every day are coming down the highway and going back up the highway to demonstrate the need for housing here? How about the homeless people? I heard Karen Paul say some months back that she didn't like the RHNA numbers and commented on Pacific Grove saying, and I don't know where we would put the homes anyway. It's very dismissive of the housing need that exists here. I would also suggest that if you're going to post information on your website in regard to demand and supply, that you take the testimony from the general manager of the Marina Coast Water District to the CPUC in recent weeks and add that to. I encourage you strongly to do that. And you'll notice when you read through that what the Marina Coast Water District is saying in that testimony is that the RENA numbers in Monterey can be met by Marina Coast Water District by having them build on Fort Ord on the Delray Oaks, Seaside, and Monterey land. There's your abdication right there. You'd rather maybe have a water district up the coast that's pulling water out of the deep aquifer, supply for our housing needs rather than doing it yourself. A little bit upset here today. This just doesn't really work for me to hear bad economics. Taking examples of errors that you have found and extrapolating a general dismissive of the conversation. Thank you for letting me comment. I wish I could continue further. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, John. Anyone else, Joel?
So before
Sorry,
going
I had
back,
myself on mute. I had myself on mute. There's no raise hand.
so
All right,
before
I'll
going,
close. I'm sorry, Dave, I want to close public comment, then
Yeah.
we can bring it back to the committee. Go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm offended by the public comment. That was dismissive. Our testimony includes all the housing and more, because the RENA numbers are less than the housing that is included in the AMBAG growth forecast. It's a very pro-housing growth forecast. Now, it's not our obligation to build that housing, and we've stated our suspicions that it will take longer or may never materialize than people might wish. But we are absolutely accommodating all of the housing that is recommended. Further, contrary to the Marina Coast's argument, we've only assumed that the city of Monterey's housing, only 10% could be served by others. And that would require rezoning of the Fort Ord parcel on South Boundary Road. We have a higher percentage for Delray Oaks because they have land, more vacant raw land available. And we use CalAM's own Seaside proportion of 50%, which Marina Coast Water District has said it's closer to 80 to 90%. So that's actually a conservative assumption. So we have more housing being built in the demand forecast than the RENA calls for, and more in this jurisdiction than perhaps the general manager of Marina Coast had suggested could or would be built in our jurisdiction. We've fully accommodated all the housing needs that the county, that AMBAG has indicated is necessary through 2045. So we're relying on strong economic analysis done by others, objective third parties, vetted 4 different ways, including the state and individual consultants. So the dismissiveness is not here. A lot of the members of our public don't want to be confronted with facts. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. It's anytime you're doing forecast for the future, obviously you try to do it as scientifically as possible, but there are so many unknowns. If we're in the middle of a 1,200-year mega drought without any relief, it's certainly going to change how California does business. You have subsidence in the Central Valley from overpumping. It's actually dropping 1 foot per year, breaking pipes, roads, infrastructure, with no relief in sight. Then even closer to home, when you have the Salinas Valley saltwater intrusion and pumping in the 900-foot antique aquifer that is virtually takes hundreds of years to replenish. I hear that. Then on the other hand, I hear RENA numbers and these forecasts for the demand for housing. And I don't think anyone's anti-housing whatsoever, but to me, it's a reality check. The bottom line is, where does the water come from? Where's the water? Where's the water? Even someday I think we will probably have to have a publicly owned desal plant. That's my opinion. But then again, that's going to rely on the ability to produce it without fossil fuels. So there's so many layers to this onion. So I feel confident that making this recommendation for the board where we can have fuller discussion on does make sense, because who knows how much of this is real. For example, today we have a project on North Fremont in the city, full approvals, and can't be built because it costs too much. And it has water. A very good friend of mine is a developer, and he was talking about how much it costs to build housing. So there's another factor that, how do you put that into a forecast, the cost of housing? When we were looking at city-owned property for affordable housing, the developers were talking $700,000 per unit to build it without the land being part of the cost.
Wow.
I know. And then the whole idea of workforce housing, where school district wants to build workforce housing, but teachers making $45,000 a year with 5 years of college don't qualify because their income's too high, so they don't qualify for federal subsidies. And I'll tell you, I just shake my head and give you a lot of credit for trying to take on demand. We simply don't know. There are too many moving parts.
Yeah.
It's the best we can do.
Yeah, I think, and it's not just us. I think your gut instinct that we're never correct. When you go back and say, what did we say 5 years ago?
Right.
It's hard to be correct.
It is. And we don't know. Wildfires left and right, that impacts areas. So you just do the best you can. And so I'm comfortable with making a motion to recommend this to the full board. If there's a second.
A second.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Committee Member Paul?
Yes.
Committee Member Anderson?
Yes.
Got your vote. Committee Member Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Roberson?
Yes. I'm sure we're going to have a very lively discussion and public comment when this reaches the full board, and I welcome that. All right, we have a discussion item, which is to discuss and provide direction regarding planned amendment to Rule 142.1, water efficient landscape requirements. What kind of direction are you looking for here, Dave?
Well,
Actually, we don't need much of anything. We're going to take it to the full board anyway. And I think it was an early comment of yours, Mayor, that this seemed kind of administrative. So we don't really need a discussion.
true.
It's a cleanup ordinance, and
And we can bring it to the full board.
All right, and so with the concurrence of our other two directors, I think we could just table that. And
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
all right, but we do need to have public comment before we do that.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Directors, are you able to see the timer here?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I would like to invite Norm Groot. Norm, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for taking public comment on this. Appreciate the opportunity to speak here. I'm representing Farm Bureau Monterey, and a question on the removal of the exemption for orchards and vineyards. There's a lot of that in the Carmel Valley area, and they are currently already under a lot of efficiency requirements through various different other agencies, as well as what they're doing for drought management right now. Just wondering why there is a suggestion from staff to remove that exemption for both orchards and vineyards. That could lead to some unintended consequences, particularly in times of wildfire where water is probably needed to use to make sure that those areas are sufficiently moist to fend off any wildfire impacts at that point. So my question here, and I appreciate that you're moving this forward to your board, but I think there should be some discussion on the removal of that exemption for orchards and vineyards and why that is being suggested by staff and what the implications will be if you do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Excellent questions.
That's a very good question.
And other public comment?
Chair Roberson, I see no raised hands.
All right, we'll close public comment and return it to our amazing staff. Mr. Groot raises some questions and I think would be excellent to answer them as much as you can now. And also, if you need more time, we could answer them at our board of directors meeting or just connect with Mr. Groot offline as well.
I was going to say, I'd be happy to talk to him. And the intention is not to necessarily create new restrictions, but rather to ensure that when new vineyards and olive trees and whatnot are planted, that they are using best management practices to use water efficiently. And at this time, they do not trigger any kind of requirement within the water management district. And I think that the concept is that we would say that best management practices need to be used in new installations. And, you know, that I can, like I said, I can talk to Norm offline on this, but that is really what we're looking at.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I guess one of the questions is, we patterned our existing requirements on the model water efficient landscape ordinance that the state was going to adopt on behalf of all of us, whether we wanted it or not. And so we chose to adopt one for all of the communities that are within our jurisdiction. So I guess a question that might need to be answered is, did these aspects about orchards and so forth come from the MWELO from the state, or were they things we added separately?
So the ordinance that we adopted in 2016 is more effective than the state's ordinance, and regions and areas, cities, whatever, were required to either adopt the state ordinance or one of their own, as long as it was at least as effective as the state's. The agricultural type uses, the vineyards, the olives, those are considered, they're exempt from the model water efficient landscape ordinance,
Okay.
which is why I'm bringing this to us now. Is just, it's not to force them into a new regulation where they have to go through a permit process when they install them, but rather to provide guidance on best management practices for irrigation systems and that kind of thing when they're put in. And this goes to a request by our Water Demand Committee. Several times over the past several years, we've discussed how we will approach water distribution systems in Carmel Valley and how we can make those more effective use of water. And anyway, so that is what the intent was here.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
We'll try to connect with Norm prior to the board meeting, because I'm sure the
Yeah.
Farm Bureau will have comment on
Sure.
it for the board meeting.
Good. That's reassuring, and we expect that to happen. All right, there's no action necessary on that item. We appreciate Norm's good, excellent questions. Do the committee members have any suggested items to be placed on the future agendas, or our incredible staff? Do you have suggested items?
No. I'm sure we'll think of some before the next scheduled meeting, but no.
So when's our next scheduled meeting without?
I believe it will be November, but let's just check that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
November.
would be November 3rd.
Yep.
Oh, darn it. just before the election. I'm retiring, as you know.
I knew where you were headed.
Yeah, there won't be a new mayor sworn in until the first meeting in December. So we'll postpone this meeting, and I have 25 things to put on the agenda for you in December. Anything else before we adjourn?
No.
I just want to thank the staff. Thank you, Stephanie, for explaining what you're trying to do with the updating the landscaping requirements. I appreciate it. You've explained it really well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think reaching out to Norm makes a lot of sense because they're in the business of saving water. So why not go to continue to have them as partners in developing these things? That's the way I look at it. So
Absolutely.
well done. All right. Seeing that, we'll just adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everybody. We almost made the hour.
Thank
have a
you.